Hello and welcome to the 64th episode of the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. If you're a Rockies fan or just a baseball person, you can follow us at Rockies Now on all social media platforms. Thanks for joining us with us today. I'm your host, Steven, along with the co host, Tom. Tom, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Fall is in full swing here in Chicago. The baseball offseason is really starting to pick up just a little bit with the owners, with the GM meetings happening right now. Or yeah, they're still going on right now.
hmm
So things are definitely kicking up. But it's good. How you doing?
Doing good. Definitely feeling a lot better than I was a few weeks ago when that horrible flu was going through Colorado. And I know Adam, he was recovering it from last week. And Adam should be joining us here tonight. Hopefully, he can make it sometime later in the podcast. He'll be coming on in. So we're excited for tonight. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but we have somewhat little time to do it. So let's get started. And we say hello to our Instagram followers who are watching on the Instagram app. We appreciate you guys. And if you're watching on X or YouTube, feel free to drop in, say hi, drop a comment. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit a like, comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do so. Again, we greatly appreciate it. A lot of stuff has actually been going on for the Colorado Rockies over the last week and a half. Starting off with some news about Daniel Bard, who has elected free agency. No big surprise. The former Rockies closer, looking back at his career with the Rockies, again, there's always a possibility he could return, but it looks like his career is mainly over unless if some team just decides to pick him up in free agency, which is possible. But again, Daniel Bard, I think he's going to be 40 years old coming into 2025. Daniel Bard in 2022, again, was fantastic, nearly an all-star that year, and arguably should have been an all-star for the Rockies. He posted a 1.79 ERA with 34 saves, which is just fantastic. And unfortunately, 2023 had a down year, and then just injuries last year. Got injured right around spring training when spring training was starting up, and so yeah, it was a miserable way to go in 2024 for Daniel Bard. Did not make a single appearance, and so now he is a free agent. And is it possible the Rockies bring him back? It's definitely possible, but from what we've heard, whether it was from Patrick Saunders over at the Denver Post or Thomas Harding, it sounds like the Rockies are going to go toward a different veteran reliever out there. Will the Rockies get a big one? Who knows? Definitely they're definitely cheaper than a player in free agency. And again, we'll talk about that later in tonight's show when we talk about free agent predictions, and we'll do that. But I think most likely Daniel Bard is done in Colorado. And then quite literally the next day, the Rockies made another move. They traded some cash to the Milwaukee Brewers for infielder Owen Miller. And this was a interesting move for the Rockies because, the Rockies, they're trying to, as we know, shed payroll this offseason. They're going to be doing that. They're going to be making some trades. But the Rockies, they didn't trade a player. That's just more of cash. And acquiring Owen Miller is a sign of more of a bench piece, right? For at least in my mind, or it could be a potential replacement for Brendan Rodgers. So that there's a lot of questions here. But one thing for sure, over the last couple of years, Bill Schmidt has said many times in whether it's the GM meetings or the winter meetings that the Rockies, their big thing, over the next couple of years is, of course, the prospects, but also building a strong bench, because arguably ever since the Rockies, were in the playoffs in, 2017, 2018, ever since then, the Rockies have not had a good bench. Right. And so they're trying to build a strong bench of different guys. And somebody pointed this out, and I keep forgetting this, but Owen Miller was a former Guardian, and so he was former teammates, I believe, with Nolan Jones at one point. So maybe the Rockies see something in Owen Miller that that they like. And granted, if you look at the numbers, he's not going to shock you by any means offensively. He's a 230, 240 type of hitter. He's not a huge power guy, but he fills that role. He fills a role, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Alan Trejo a little bit. He's not going to do much for you, but he has some versatility in there. So I thought that was an interesting trade. I thought that was a decent pickup for the Rockies. Again, he's not, as of right now, probably not going to be your starting second baseman at the Rockies. Um, retain Rodgers, but if the Rockies do move Rodgers, Owen Miller is definitely a possibility to be that starting second baseman for a while before the Rockies call up Adil Amador or either they're going to roll with Aaron Schunk or somebody like that to start the season at second base. And so that the Rockies made that move, and again, it was the first official move of the offseason. And then the other day, I believe it was on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, it was announced that the Rockies have 2 Gold Glove winners, and Rawlings announced it with the Gold Glove ceremony. Ezekiel Tovar was, he was a winner for the shortstop from the National League, and it's his first Gold Glove. And by the way, winning that Gold Glove award for Tovar made him the youngest shortstop ever in the history of the award to win the Gold Glove at shortstop, which is incredible. It goes to show you how good Tovar is defensively this year. And I know that there's a lot of people out there saying that Dansby Swanson deserved it or Mason Wynn deserved it over in St. Louis. But Tovar, again, we knew this even last year. Tovar was a finalist last year. I believe Swanson came away with the award a year ago. But Tovar definitely, in my mind, deserves this award. I think it was a matter of time. Even when he was in the minor leagues a number of years back, a lot of the Rockies prospects, his teammates, and even scouts were saying, Tovar, he's going to be that guy that's going to win multiple Gold Gloves. And so we saw that this year, and I think we're going to see him win plenty more in the future. Brenton Doyle, no big surprise. He kept his throne of gold, as I like to say, in center field. So he's a 2-time Gold Glover in center field. So no big surprise there. Even though Jacob Young of the Nationals had a good run there and was, a finalist, he could have won the award. But definitely Doyle 100% deserves this award, and no big surprise. Again, best defensive center fielder in baseball. And then the next day, really, again, a bunch of these moves were pretty much a day after. The following day, Jacob Stallings and the Rockies, there was somewhat of a mutual decline in the option, for that option. And so Jacob Stallings is now a free agent. However, according to Patrick Lyons, who is a Rockies beat reporter, he has stated several times over the last several weeks and months that the Rockies and Jacob Stallings, they have had talks about restructuring the contract of him potentially coming back for one more year. So we'll see. I told Tom this, but I feel like it's a 50-50 chance for him to come back next year. But if he doesn't come back, I think it's a good thing for the Rockies to go with Hunter Goodman and Drew Romo as the catching tandem, and heck, maybe even Willie McIver, who he's been making some strides in AAA, and it was a fan favorite down in Albuquerque. So we could see that happen. Or if he does come back, if Jacob Stallings does come back, I think that's also a good thing. It gives some more time for Romo to learn under Stallings, and I think Stallings is a great veteran guy to learn under. So we'll see what happens there. But those were some of the moves that the Rockies made this past week. So Tom, give me some of your thoughts on Bard and Stallings, and of course with the trade and the Gold Glove announcements.
Well, for sure. I mean, the trade for Owen Miller, I got to say, if Rogers gets traded, there is a lot of people who would think that he's going to probably take over that spot at second base. They give him a chance, but I think it's a bench bat. I think he's going to be just for depth purposes because I think the Rockies, whether they trade Rogers or not, I think they have a couple. I agree that they're going to either go with, if they think Amador can get the everyday spot, or I think multiply. If not, then I think Aaron Schunk will get those everyday at bats and see how he does in that role. Daniel Bard, I got to give the guy credit. We all know his great story, struggles with mental health, and how he had the yips, and after his pretty good start to his career in Boston, and as a Rockies closer, he amazed us. I mean, I can remember what was it, opening day of 2022, where he just lit up the Dodgers in a 1-2-3 inning to secure an opening day win in Colorado against the Dodgers at Coors Field. I thought, that was pretty good there. And so, I mean, look at his 2022. He had 16 and a third innings. He had a 1.79 ERA with 34 saves. I remember that was quite a season for him, and that got him the extension. But after not playing at all this season, his future was basically sealed. And, I think he most likely will retire. I don't imagine there's going to be much of a market at all for him. So if that's the case, best of luck. Thank you, Daniel Bard. You were an inspirational individual as far as a lot of people out there who struggle with mental health. So again, thank you. And if you do decide to retire, I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, and best to you and your family. What was I going to say? The last thing, the Stallings, I think you and I agreed it was going to be 50-50. He'd opt in, 50-50, he'd opt out. I do think he is going to have a decent market. either a team with a very heavily with a powerhouse offensive lineup can pick him up and be that ninth guy in the lineup to be the defensive player they carry in the lineup at catcher, or maybe he can catch on with another team. I think it's more likely 80% he doesn't come back, 20% he comes back, just maybe to be that veteran leadership in the clubhouse. So I did say this on our Instagram page. I think it could be Romo and Willie McGyver, but he just was elected to free agency the other day. We'll see how that shakes up, but I would be okay with Goodman and Romo as the two catchers to start the season. I just interesting to see if they do, who's going to be the third catcher they add to the roster, whether it's from outside the organization or they promote from within. We'll have to wait and see. And the Gold Gloves, I mean, I don't think he's just the best center fielder. I think he's the best defensive outfielder in the game, to be honest with you. As we talked about in the pre-show meeting, I'm looking according to Baseball Savant. Brenton Doyle, among all major league center fielders, was third in outs above average. He was behind Jose Siri of Tampa. He was tied with Jose Siri with Tampa Bay at 16, and they were behind Jacob Young of the Washington Nationals, who had 20. A little surprising, but either way, people can hark all they want. I think, again, he's the best defensive outfielder in baseball, and it was no surprise. And I do agree with you. He keeps that gold on his whatever your saying was. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. But it's just another piece he got his trophy case. And then Ezekiel Tovar, he had a quietly great defensive season. You didn't see a lot of web gems from him on obviously they don't do the top 10 web gems in SportsCenter much anymore. But again, Zeke, I think that's the first of many. He's going to get more. So great for him. And like I said, I think going into next year, the Rockies again could have still one of the best defensive infields in baseball. Because I do believe Toglia could definitely be in the running next year because he is, not the best defensive first baseman, but he still could be in the top half of Major League Baseball first baseman.
Yeah, I mean, you look at McMahon, who is he's still waiting for that chance to win his first Gold Glove. You could argue and say that he's a Gold Glove at third base, even though he hasn't won one yet. Then you got Tovar, who won his first Gold Glove. Then you got Brendan Rodgers, which people forget he won his first Gold Glove in 2022, and then Toglia. He's a potential future first base Gold Glove candidate. So you really have a Gold Glove infield, which is awesome, right? And so, and then the outfield, you got center field covered, and then Nolan Jones. Again, if you go back to 2023, if I'm not mistaken, Nolan Jones was nearly, I think, according to some stats out there, Nolan Jones could have been a left field Gold Glove candidate in left field because of that arm. And Nolan Jones, he definitely struggled in 2024 defensively in left field, right? But you're looking at a Gold Glove type of outfield too, and we'll have to wait and see how Jordan Beck does in right field next year, because I think right now he's clearly the favorite to be the starting right fielder next year for the Rockies. And of course, that's going to be something to watch in spring training. Will Zach Veen bump, Jordan Beck or Yankel Fernandez? Will he have an interesting spring to where he could be named the right fielder? But as of right now, it looks like Jordan Beck. But Jordan Beck also too is a very good, defensive outfielder too, and very good arm. So Rockies, they have a, really good defensive team, which is something that you definitely need especially at a place like Coors Field, right? Huge ballpark. So exciting stuff, man. Exciting stuff. All right. So there was that. So again, a lot of moves for the Rockies over the last, or I should say moves and news over the last week and a half. And again, we're heading into, we're already into the, GM meetings right now. And then winter meetings are only a few, which is hard to believe, which is really only a few weeks away, a little over that, 3-4 week mark, right? Early December is when we're looking at the winter meetings. And so that's really when the free agency is going to start, getting hot, and the stove is going to start burning. And, and we've talked about it a lot, but will the Rockies do much? We don't anticipate it. And I don't think all of us can agree with that. But, we were talking about, Daniel Bard, are they going to, bring back Bard? Are they going to go out in free agency and get a big, relief pitcher, right? And it's definitely possible. And the Rockies, I believe they have, was it 120 or 130 million to spend this offseason. So they do have some money, but again, a lot of it is going to be allocated toward, I think, the draft next year. I think the Rockies might actually, of course, by dropping some of these contracts. They're going to try to save some money as well, because again, they're paying Chris Bryant a bunch of money, right, and Ryan McMahon as well, and some of the other guys, Marquez, who, he's just coming back from Tommy John surgery, Senzatella coming off of a ACL and a torn, Tommy John surgery as well. So again, the Rockies, they have a bunch of these. It's unfortunate, but they have a bunch of these guys that are coming off of injuries that are being paid heavily right now. Senzatella was paid, with that, extension a few years back, right? So the Rockies are going to save some money, but also I think they're going to spend some of it in solidifying the bench a little bit. And of course, by acquiring Owen Miller for the Braves, I think that definitely helped. But also, too, I think there's a possibility they might go out and get a reliever. Carlos Estevez has been rumored to be potentially a guy that could come back, but I think Estevez would be. I think he's going to have a very good market. Again, he was an all-star for the Angels back in 2023, and not to mention I believe he was moved this past offseason. This past season. But Estevez, he's going to be a guy that's a lot of teams are going to want. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and find out. But the Rockies, again, we'll have to wait and see. But I think they're going to go with the young group next year, which is I think what we are all excited about and looking forward to. And so, I'm excited. And again, I think today I saw on X that I forget the name, but a Rockies ticket holder posted, I think a letter that Bud Black had just sharing out today or yesterday to the season ticket holders. And Bud Black is talking about how they're excited about the young group, and I was kind of surprised about this, but Bud Black, I think in the letter said that he's more excited about the Rockies than he's been in, since 2017, 2018. And I was like, that's kind of a big leap, right? Because that's when the Rockies had a really good, solid group. And for him to be that excited tells you that maybe the Rockies see something coming up. And so that's going to be something to watch here in 2025. So that'll be exciting stuff. So, yeah, a lot of interesting stuff going on for the Rockies right now. So again, keep an eye on it. We have another month until, the winter meetings go on. So that'll be awesome. And then I think in like 2 months we have the Rockies Fan Fest at Coors Field, so that'll be fun too. So if you went to Rockies Fan Fest, for whoever's listening or watching, if you had a fun time, hey, they're gonna do it again. I believe in the same time, late January, so that'll be a lot of fun.
It is hard to believe the GM meetings are only about a month away. Or winter meetings, excuse me.
Winter meetings, yeah. Right now, the GM meetings I think are going on right now. But yeah, like again, it's just like hard to believe. I mean, because again, the baseball season just ended like a week and a half ago, right?
Give or take. And right now, the GM meetings, that's where we start laying the grounds for potential free agent deals and trades.
Yeah, and again, I think Bill Schmidt, I'm sure he's getting some calls because again, there's arguably a lot of. I mean, this happened during the deadline, but the Rockies, they got calls for Ryan McMahon, and the Rockies are not going to move McMahon, and they're not going to move Marquez, but they could definitely move Gomber, as we've talked about before on the show. They could definitely, move Quantrill, but I don't think he's going to get traded. I think he's going to be more of a non-tendering, because nobody's going to want to pick up that contract and get pay him the salary because of injuries and just performance wise. But the Rockies, they're definitely going to get some calls, and I think we might be seeing some deals. And just based off of the Owen Miller signing was more of like, hey, this could be something that is Rogers. Is it Rogers done in a Rockies uniform? So I don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. And that's something to stay tuned here on the Rockies Now podcast and on our social media pages. So make sure you're subscribed and follow us over there as well on Instagram, X, and Threads. So as we start to wrap up this short podcast, and again, there's not really much to talk about in terms of the baseball world, because this is the time of year when free agency starts to heat up, and we've already seen some smaller deals. And again, a couple weeks ago we saw some trades, and it's talking about the Braves and the Angels trade, and but we decided, and again, it doesn't look like, as again, we'll wait and see if Adam shows up, but yeah, so. It doesn't look like he'll be coming in tonight, but again, we'll see. But we're gonna do kind of what we did last year. We're gonna talk about our free agent predictions, and we have some for you. I think at least I have 10 that I have predicted, and I kind of cooked them up today and over the last few days. And so we're
Well,
going to kick off on that. So, oh wait, go ahead, Tom.
no, no, just real quick. Why don't
Yeah.
we answer the one question we have in the chat? Who's not well, for a player who's not on the list, but we can maybe give our brief comments on right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mr. Vallejos, he's back in the chat. Mr. Vallejos says, "Give me some low budget targets for the Rockies."
Ooh, I have to think about that one.
That's a good post that we could post on Twitter and Instagram. That's something that we definitely need to do that. So shout out to Mr. Vallejos for that.
Here's the second.
Yeah.
The second. Well, here's the second question. Gleyber Torres is not on our top 10 list, but I'll give my. If you want to, I give my idea. I for one, though he's not going back to New York.
Yeah.
I think his time, and I think, and the one thing is, I don't know if you saw this, but I'm sure some maybe or maybe not some of our viewers or listeners saw this. He made some. I can't remember what reporter he told this to. He said. They asked him about what's your flexibility about moving around the infield. He said, "No, I'm a second base." Well, sorry, Gleyber, you just really narrowed your market there by just saying you were going to stay at second base.
Yeah.
And people are saying, "Oh, he had such a great postseason. He really just increased his value." I will tell you this one thing: being a big postseason performer does really not much of anything for your market. It doesn't make it better or worse. It just kind of it's you're you're performing in October, big deal. But first, you got to get to October to do that. I actually did put a team down here. This is probably going to be I did see that rumor as well that the Colorado Rockies were a fit. I think more than what they're saying is he's not a fit. He's more like the Rockies are like kind of one of those other teams that they would say, yeah, you have your top 3, 4, or 5. Then the Rockies are another team. I actually here's a wild idea. I actually have him on my list as one of our Laker teams. I have him going to the Mariners.
Oh, Gleyber Torres, yeah.
Yeah, because they right now you have J.P. Crawford still at shortstop. You have Dylan Moore and Rojas currently manning third base, but I have another guy who I have an idea going there. And probably that could spoil something. But I could see him plugging in there with Seattle and being kind of a good solid second baseman and probably could bat in the top 6 in their lineup somewhere and help out Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh. So that's my thoughts on Gleyber Torres. So he's not going to do one of those big market team stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is we've seen this in years past, and again, thumbs up to Mr. Vallejos. I feel like in years past we've seen Gleyber Torres to Colorado. I feel like we've seen that multiple times before. But again, the Rockies, that's when they've had Brendan Rodgers at second base. And I'm not – it definitely could happen. Owen Miller doesn't scream starting second baseman to me unless if, like, they decide to completely, sell off, like, a bunch of people. But at the same time, though, I don't think even if the Rockies do trade Rodgers, Owen Miller's not starting. It's going to be Aaron Schunk or, Amador. They're going to put Amador or Schunk in there. They're not going to have Owen Miller be the starting second baseman because Owen Miller, I don't think he's been a starter at all whatsoever in his career. He's more of a bench guy, kind of like a Sam Hilliard type of guy, So Gleyber potentially. I mean, the world I would see Gleyber Torres come to Colorado is if they trade Rodgers this offseason and they evaluate Amador. And again, Amador has yet to play AAA ball. And again, I personally believe, and I've said this multiple times, and I'll say it again, on this podcast, you're going to hear me say this for the rest of the time. I personally think that, hitters, at least in the Rocky system, ought to go to AAA. Pitchers, I'd have them stop, in Hartford and then skip AAA because in that environment, Albuquerque is so bad for pitchers. And I think, Albuquerque should be just a hitter's place for the Rockies prospects, right? So, for me, I'd like to see Amador just have a little bit more time in the minor leagues and then have Aaron Schunk, start at second base. And if the Rockies feel like, hey, Schunk, he's his ceiling is a bench guy. We need a little bit more thump in that lineup and more experience. I think Gleyber Torres would be a decent fit here in Colorado. I really would. But will it happen? I just don't think so. I really think that they're probably going to have Schunk be second base. But that's if they trade Rodgers. But as Thomas Harding wrote a few weeks back, the Rockies, as of right now, before they get any deals done, I'm sure Bill Schmidt will get calls this offseason, right? And I'm sure he's already getting calls right now. As of right now, Brendan Rodgers will be a part of the 2025 Rockies team to start the year. Now, it doesn't mean that they won't trade him. They definitely very well could trade him, especially if Rodgers goes on a very good run. Like, again, this year, You remember it wasn't in July or August when he had 7 or 8 home runs in that 1 month, right? So that could definitely help his value, and I think the Rockies definitely could trade him in July. But if the Rockies want to get rid of some of the money and start focusing on going deeper in this rebuild and really, I guess, ripping the Band-Aid off and fully committing to this, yeah, I just feel like Rogers, he's probably staying, but again, it definitely could happen to where he's traded. And if he does get traded, I think Mr. Vallejos has a good case to where we could see a Gleyber Torres come to Colorado, or another guy that could be a possibility that's been swirling around for a while. Brandon Drury, I think that could be another possibility. But Brandon Drury, he's more of, I feel like, a bench guy, kind of like an Owen Miller, even though Drury has a little bit more pop. So I don't know. It's interesting, but again, thank you to Mr. Vallejos for the comment there. But um, for low budget targets, I think those guys, especially like I just mentioned, like a Drury or Torres, they would definitely be considered a low budget target. And then when Tom was talking about catchers, will the Rockies go out and get a free agent catcher, somewhat of a veteran catcher? I don't think so. It definitely could happen, but I just don't think so. I think they're going to more focus on, again, lowering that payroll and seeing what the younger players have. So, yeah. um,
I was just opening Track real quick to see if I can find just to give a possible answer. I'm thinking, to be honest, if a low budget target for me would be probably the pitching market, whether it's reliever or because I already mentioned in our last episode 2 non-tender candidates. I could see the Rockies going after an again. Just looking at dollar figure or oops, excuse me, looking at low budget dollar. Oops, wait a second. What the? Oh, sorry, my computer's acting kind of funny here. My
it's all
apologies.
good.
But there are some interesting targets. I'm not sure where they're going to end up because above you got guys like Matt, you got the older veterans like Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander. I don't think the Rockies are going to go after any of those guys. I'm just going to try and pick a random one on a low budget target. Carlos Estevez, to your point earlier, he is projected to make possibly in the neighborhood of $5 to $7 million a season. That if the Rockies are willing to not cut payroll too much, that's a possibility. Another guy who maybe could be a surprise, again, we'll talk about him later. You got your Tanner Scott. He's projected to go between around 4 to 6 million. So that's a possibility. So I'll give you one more. I'm gonna go. Here's something that might stand. I don't know if anybody knows this. Ryan Stanek. He actually he was on the Astros for several seasons, and he was one of their lights out, one of their solid middle relievers. So there's a couple ideas of buy low, possible high upside right there. I can give you Mr. Vallejo. But I think if the Rockies are going to spend in the free agent market most of their budget, I would say they go after use it on pitching because you can never have, because it's the saying, you can never have too much pitching.
Right. Yeah, I agree. We do have a couple comments here on Instagram. We have Wyoming Traveler talking about the Bryant situation. Very quickly, we've already harped on it enough. Bryant, he's going to be the DH moving forward next year. That's a guarantee. He's not going to be playing right field anytime soon, unless if there's a day off for Jordan Beck. But yeah, like as Tom puts it, see ya, Bryant, your outfield days are over. You're going to be primarily DH, and you're not going to be playing first base either. So first base is solely to Toglia now. It's like the Rockies, they're not going to have Bryant play first base anymore. So for the Bryant situation, he's going to be the Rockies DH moving forward. Then we have Cubs Talk 24/7. What are your thoughts on Project 2025? And he's talking about the Rockies, of course. For the project, I think if you talk about project, it's basically the restructuring, rebuilding of the Rockies, and that's really what it's been about over the last couple of years. It's a project that's ongoing, and we're seeing that right now, and it's not pretty as any rebuild is. It's a nasty project, right? And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's not going to be all roses. It's going to be painful, right? I mean, are we looking at another 100-loss season? Potentially. Are we looking at a 90-loss season, 80-loss season? Probably. But, again, I'm not putting my faith and hope in Bud Black and what he said in the letter to the season ticket holders today. But, he seems very excited about 2025. And as our third co-host, Adam, on the show, we're excited for 2025, and there's a optimism that maybe the Rockies could turn this thing around next year, as soon as next year, and make the playoffs. That's what Adam and all of us are hoping for. But it's just, again, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be an ongoing process. And again, for a lot of these rebuilds, especially for a team like the Rockies in a division where it's so hard to win, this is going to take a while, right? I mean, kind of like Baltimore. You look at Baltimore, they had, what was it, 4 or 500 lost seasons in a row, right? And so, and that division is almost as hard as the National League West, right? You have the Yankees, you have the Red Sox, Rays, Blue Jays are always competitive. So, I mean, and then now, so again, it's going to be a difficult challenge for the Rockies, but is it surmountable? I believe so. And especially if the Rockies have the talent in the minor league system, and by the end of this year and going into next year, the Rockies, I think my prediction will be a top 10 farm system, and they're already a top farm system right now in baseball, top 15 if I'm not mistaken, in a lot of areas and a lot of different baseball pages. The Rockies, they're well on their way to turning this thing around, and the project, if you call it a project, is really just go even deeper into the young kids and see what they have, analyze them, and let them get their playing time, and just see what you have. And really at the same time, though, just, let the young prospects in AA and AAA, let them get regular playing time. And when they're ready, call them up and then put them in your lineup. So I hope that answers your question, Cubs 24/7. Then we have one more comment here on Instagram from Rocks Fan MC. Could you see the management moving someone like Tovar or Toglia for multiple lower level guys like we've seen in the past with Arenado and Tulo? That's a heavy no for me. I think the Rockies, they've already committed to Tovar for, what was it, 7 years now, 7-8 year deal. And I know people said, well, they did the same thing with Arenado and Tulo, and guess what? They traded him. Well, Tulowitzki, he was on the lower end of his career. If you remember, Tulowitzki was having all these injuries, and he could not stay on the field whatsoever. He could not, play more than 100 games a year. He had multiple leg injuries, multiple leg surgeries, and I think it was a good time to trade him. And now, granted, the pieces that we got in return weren't great. It just opened up a spot for Trevor Story the following year, right? And so, it was a good time to trade Tulowitzki, despite the contract. And while in years past we've seen the Rockies make these, contracts and these extensions that haven't panned out very well, it was the right move to trade Tulo. And then for Arenado, it was just a preference for Arenado to move out. He didn't enjoy it here, and plus there was that relationship with Jeff Bridich that really severed the connection between the franchise and Nolan. So I think, for me, at least as a Rockies fan that have seen it all, or at least most of it all, I think it's safe to say that Tovar is going to be safe here. The Rockies, they, and not to mention that contract, the money, it's a good contract. It's not like, oh, they, overpaid Tovar by any means. This is a good move. They paid their young players, and hopefully they do the same with Brenton Doyle. And we'll see about Toglia. So Toglia, he's not on an extension, but should he have another solid season in 2025 like he did this past year, why not to Toglia too? So I think, Rocks Fan MC, to answer your question, I think, you can sleep well tonight and over the next several years, not having to worry about Tovar being traded. If he does get traded, you can reply to me and say that I was wrong. So, but yeah, I think we're going to be okay with Tovar and Toglia staying with the organization. And then let me see if we have any more comments here before we head into our last segment here. We do have one more comment here on X from Mr. Vallejos. Probably means the Cole Irvin, Kevin Biggio. Kevin Biggio, I know he's, when he was coming out, he had a lot of hype because of being the son of a Hall of Famer. But I mean, Cole Irvin, not a bad idea. The lefty, the Rockies could use up some lefties, but again, I had this question the other day. Somebody asked me, should the Rockies go after, some pitching? Well, I don't think so, honestly. And I know it sounds weird to say this, but the Rockies, they finally have pitching depth, right, Tom? I mean, we have it in AAA, AA. Carson Palmquist, he's going to make his debut this year, or I should say next year in 2025. I think Dollander is going to make his debut at some point. Sean Sullivan is going to make his debut at some point. And you already have Marquez, Sendatella, Freeland, Ryan Feltner, And and even Brandon Blaylock, he's also a possibility there as well. So the Rockies, they finally have pitching depth where, again, 2 years ago in 2022, the Rockies had zero pitching depth. We were scared half to death. Who's going to pitch for us today? And we had to go with Peter Lambert, or we had to sign Jose Urena, right? And I know a lot of Rockies fans are cringing by hearing that name, but we had no pitching depth where now it is. And so to answer your question, Mr. Playhouse, I think the Rockies are going to pass on those two players. Now, it definitely could happen. They could get some more depth in there, but I think I think the Rockies are pretty much set on starting pitching heading into next year. Which, again, is as much as it'd be kind of cool to see some of those guys, like especially Kevin Biggio or a Bo Bichette type of guy. Even though Bo Bichette's probably going to stay in Toronto for right now. I think the Rockies are pretty much set. And then Mr. Vallejo said, Nolan Arenado back to Colorado, let's ride. Maybe not those two last words, because the last time we heard those two words, it didn't really turn out very well for the other team across town. So we'll see. But yeah, so again, thank you so much for your comments. And again, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments below, whether it's on Instagram or X or YouTube. But as we head into the last segment, let's get into our free agent predictions, shall we? So I'll go first, and then I'll have Tom. So I'll go very quickly here, since we're going to wrap up very quickly tonight. So starting off with number 10. So again, I did the top 10, and again, I looked at MLB.com's top 10 rankings for the top prospects in baseball, and not prospects, top free agents in baseball. So starting off with number 10, Tanner Scott. This was one that I looked at a couple teams, and they were American League teams, and ultimately I decided, and I predicted, and I looked at all the teams' roster and their depth chart, and I looked at the teams, what their needs are, and granted, this team could use more offense, and they're looking for somewhat of a big bat in that lineup to complement Bobby Witt Jr. I have Tanner Scott going to the Kansas City Royals. I think Kansas City, their bullpen was not bad, but definitely could use some more help. Their starting rotation was excellent this year with Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans, and they had solid seasons in some, and with some of the guys in their lineup, like obviously Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvi Perez. But I feel like they need another guy in that bullpen to just lock things down and to do well. And again, Scott, I think he went to San Diego, at the deadline, and he did struggle a little bit at times. But I think Tanner Scott is definitely a good lefty pitcher. I really like Scott being in a Kansas City Royals uniform. I think that would work out very well. It probably will be like a 1 or 2 year type of deal in my mind for Tanner Scott. I don't think it's going to be like a 3 or 4 or 5 year deal. It's going to be a smaller deal, but I have Tanner Scott going to the Kansas City Royals. And then number 9 for Jack Flaherty. This is a team that's looking for some pitching, even though they're probably going to lose, in my mind, Juan Soto. I have Jack Flaherty going to the New York Yankees. I don't think he's returning to the Dodgers. I think the Yankees could use another pitcher. And plus, Flaherty has had a lot of connections to the Yankees, and there's been a lot of rumors reporting that the Yankees really like Flaherty. I think Flaherty fits well in New York. I think that he could be a back end of the rotation for that rotation of Garrett Cole, Cortez, Rodon. So I think it would fit well there. And then not to mention Marcus Stroman as well. So I think Flaherty fits well in that rotation. And then Willie Adames. This is a team that just recently came out the other day saying that they're looking for shortstops. I have Willie Adames going to the San Francisco Giants in the Bay Area. I think that is a match made in heaven. I think that that bat and that swing would do well in that ballpark. And I didn't know Bob Melvin, he would like a guy like Willie Adames in that lineup. And I think, it would be a nice pop there. And I think, again, they're looking for shortstops. Buster Posey said that the other day in a press conference, in a meeting. So I think Willie Adames is going to the Giants. I'm not going to give any certain amount of money or years, but I just feel like he's probably going to go to San Francisco in my mind. Pete Alonso is the next guy. And there was 2 teams with Pete Alonso. I have Pete Alonso going to either the Astros or the Yankees. The Astros could definitely use a first baseman. And I know that, there are teams out there could also use a first baseman. But St. Louis, originally I was thinking about St. Louis, but then St. Louis just came out and said that Wilson Contreras will be their first baseman, which is, in my mind, a little bit puzzling because he's a catcher. But I don't know. Things are not necessarily turning out well for Contreras, especially with injuries over the last couple of years. But ultimately, I decided that Pete Alonso is going to go across town and go to the New York Yankees. I think he's going to be the new first baseman for them. Anthony Rizzo is out of New York. So I think they're going to go after Pete Alonso, and I think they're just going to, basically swap jerseys and head on over to Yankee Stadium. So I have Alonso going to the New York Yankees. Anthony Santander, um, I have him going to the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies, they could definitely use a guy that hit 44 home runs, Tony Taters, for the Baltimore Orioles, and I think he definitely would do well in Philadelphia. They definitely could use his offense, his power, his bat. The Phillies, they need a little bit more firepower. Bryce Harper, again, while he's still good, he's not getting any younger. They could definitely use a guy like Santander, who's younger, or close to about the same age, maybe a tad bit younger. And so, yeah, I mean, Santander, I think he would fit well on that team. And plus, again, there's been a lot of rumors circulating about Santander going to the Phillies. The Phillies are one of the favorites, according to Mark Feinstein. So I have Anthony Santander going to Philadelphia, and then Max Fried. In my mind, he's leaving Atlanta in my predictions, and I think he's going to go to. Even though this is going to pain me as a Rockies fan, I think Max Fried is going to go to San Diego. I think San Diego, they have a very good team now. They have a good manager, and I just Mike Schilt, he's done an incredible job for San Diego, and I think they're going to get some more. The San Diego is always going to get a top 10, top 15 prospect. It usually happens, and I think this is going to be their guy. Max Fried is going to be their guy. I feel like their lineup is pretty much set. They have solid young players, not to mention along with complementing of Manny Machado, Tatis. I just feel like, and then obviously Bogarts. I feel like Max Fried is going to be a big foundational, if not their ace for that rotation, and they already have a bunch of ace type guys in that rotation, right? Of Joe Musgrove and so on and so forth. So I had Max Fried going to San Diego. Alex Bregman, this was a simple one. I feel like he's going to reunite with his old manager of AJ Hinch in Detroit. I think Detroit could definitely use a third baseman, and even there's a possibility he can move to second base, right? So I think Bregman's going to go to Detroit, and I think it's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it. I think we're gonna see Bregman go to Detroit, and I think his days in Houston are done. And then Blake Snell. I have him going to the AL East to the Boston Red Sox. This is a team that's, could definitely use some starting pitching, and I think Boston would fit well for Blake Snell. I just really like Boston's location for Snell, and again, he would be going back to the AL East to where he started when he was with Tampa, and I think he knows the Red Sox very well, and I think he's going to go back to to the East to play for the Red Sox. And then going up to the last two guys for Corbin Burns. For Corbin Burns, I have him leaving Baltimore, and I'm having him go to a team that's going to lose, one of their best pitchers, if not their best pitcher, Max Fried. I have Corbin Burns going to the Atlanta Braves. I don't know. There's a lot of guys that I just love to see on this team, but also it just makes sense. I think Corbin Burns would just make sense in Atlanta, and to fill the shoes of Max Fried, who's going to be leaving them. I think Corbin Burns would fit well with Atlanta and with their program. And obviously they usually do well with pitching, right? They turn guys' careers around, and of course Corbin Burns never has had that issue. But I think with them losing Max Fried, they could definitely use another guy to replace Max Fried, and I think Corbin Burns is going to be that guy. And now we go to the most coveted, free agent in baseball this offseason, and that's Juan Soto. Of course, all 30 teams could want him. It would really want him on their team. And boy, if the Rockies could have a chance, I'd love to have Juan Soto. But ultimately, I have Juan Soto going across town to the New York Mets. I think Steve Cohen, which came out today, Steve Cohen, Scott Boras, and Juan Soto reportedly are going to meet, I think, this week or this upcoming week. I think I think it's going to happen. New York Mets, they have a good team now. They went all the way to the NLCS. I think the Mets, they're going to get Juan Soto and be a part of that lineup. And again, Steve Cohen, I think he loves to, use his money. He's a very rich guy, and I think it's really in many ways a match made in heaven for both Scott Boras, Juan Soto, and all parties involved. And so I think we're going to see Juan Soto go to the New York Mets. So those are my top 10 MLB free agent predictions. Tom, I'm going to go over to you.
All right, sounds good. Well, as I told you, we already gave you a preview for one outside the top 10. So let's start with top 10. Tanner Scott, I have him going to the Philadelphia Phillies. They lost a couple of bullpen pieces. I see them wanting to add. I think Tanner Scott would be a good fit in their middle relief spot to be a higher leverage reliever. So that's where I have him going to the Fighting City of Philadelphia. Jack Flaherty, first of all, I'll give a little spoiler here. I don't have Corbin Burns going back to Baltimore. I have Jack Flaherty going to Baltimore. I did have the thought of Jack Flaherty going back to the Dodgers, considering he is represented by CAA, Creative Artists Agency, which is a sports agency. Also happens to be Shohei Ohtani's agency. They are headquartered, main offices in about 5 blocks from Dodger Stadium. But no, I have, and also Jack Flaherty is from the Southern California area. He went to Westlake High School with Max Fried and Lucas Giolito. And was coached by White Sox pitching coach Ethan Katz, but I have him going up to the Northeast to pitch for the Baltimore Orioles. Now to go into Willy Adames. This is one guy I have staying with his cell team. I have him going back to Milwaukee. I was thinking about having him go somewhere else, but I think ultimately he had a very good start to his career with the Rays. He has thrived with the Orioles. With the Brewers, excuse me. I don't see him making the change. He's going to go where he feels comfortable and happy. He's being productive. I have him going back to the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm going to skip. I'm going to go out of order here with the predictions. I'm going to move it around a little bit. I'm going to go with Antti Santander. This one was a tough one. I don't have him going back to the Orioles. I'm thinking, what's a team that's on the rise that could use some fire, a little bit of oomph in their line, a little bit of pop. Mm-hmm. So I had 2 teams from the same division. It was in the AL Central. I'm going with the Detroit Tigers. I think they need, the other one was the Kansas City Royals. I think both teams need some good extra pop in their lineup, a veteran presence who can really add a little bit of an extra oomph. So I am going to the Detroit Tigers. They're a team that, really surprised a lot of people. He made that big leap forward, so why not even try and take it a step further forward? Mm-hmm. So I have him going to the Tigers. Max Fried, I also toy with him going to the Dodgers in this one because, again, he is also represented by CAA. But no, I have him staying in my hometown. I have him going to the Chicago Cubs. They have Justin Steele and Shota Imanaga. Why not add Max Fried and have kind of a good solid front 3 right there in your rotation, because Justin Steele had injury problems last year. So why not add a second lefty at the top of your rotation? So I have Max Fried going to Chicago Cubs. I see them kind of opening the wallet. Tom Ricketts opening the wallet just a little bit more. So, and they could use an extra starter. Now I'm going to go back to order here. Actually, no, I'm going to go with Alex Bregman. I already told you this one in our pre-show meeting. So I have him staying in the same division that he has been playing in his entire career, but I have him going somewhere else. I have him going to the Seattle Mariners because I mentioned when Mr. Vallejos asked the question where Torres is going, it would be quite a thing. You have J.P. Crawford at shortstop, you put Torres at second, and then you move Bregman into third base. I don't see Bregman going back to the Houston Nationals. Not that they've kind of worn out their relationship. I just don't see him being a lifer with that team. I could be wrong. But, I have him having to change the scenery to end his career with the Seattle Mariners. Now I'm going to go to Blake Snell. This one was a tricky one. As we talked about in the pre-show meeting, I had him going to the Cardinals last year, was it? I think, didn't you say I had him? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Cardinals, yeah.
You and I are in agreement. I have him going to the Red Sox. I don't see him staying in the Bay Area. That was just a one-year deal to reestablish his value because you couldn't get a multi-year deal after winning the Cy Young. So I have him going to the Boston Red Sox. And fun fact, he is from Seattle, but Seattle's not going to sign any more pitching for their rotation.
Yeah, their pitching is good, yeah.
They're set in the rotation.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I'm going to go here. Pete Alonso, I'm back and forth on this one. I have him staying with the New York Mets.
Interesting. Yeah.
I did have the thoughts like you did, where considering Anthony Rizzo, he's done in New York with the Yankees. I had him going from Queens to the Bronx. But I said, you know what? I think he's going to sell Scott tell his agent Scott Boras, listen, let's work out a deal. I want to be a Met for life, and I think he's going to be a Met for his entire career.
Hmm.
So that's that. And then next, Corbin Burns. Yeah, he's not going back to Baltimore. I
Yeah.
don't see them opening the wallet for him. I have him going to Houston. They
Who?
lost.
Yeah.
They lost Verlander. They still have Fred Morales. I think they're gonna non-tender Urquidy. I think
Mhm.
so. They need a guy. Now they got Josh Hader at the back end of the rotation. They need somebody to head the front of the at the back of the bullpen. They need a frontline ace. I think it's going to be Corbin Burns. So I am going to Houston. And I'm playing a safe bet. I think Juan Soto is going back to the Yankees. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I could flip flop him and Pete Alonso. Alonso goes to the Yankees. Soto goes to the Mets. But I think he enjoyed batting in front of Judge. I think he likes New York. He likes the Yankees. I think he is ultimately going to go back to the New York Yankees. So there is my top 10.
Yeah. Yeah, some of ours are actually kind of close if you think about it. Again, like Soto and Alonso were kind of let's just swapped, and then again we agree with Blake Snell. I just really like Snell and Fenway, and plus again they need pitching in Boston, and I feel like their lineup is pretty much set. Again, it's Trevor Story. He's hopefully fingers crossed he's going to stay healthy for them. You got Devers, you got Duran, who was an All-Star last year. I mean, then you got, Rafaela, who is, again, arguably one of the best. Next to Doyle, could be one of the best defensive center fielders. He's been so good out there in center field in Fenway. But they have a decent team. And actually, it kind of a little bit reminds me of a little bit of the Rockies, lineup a little bit. What could be the Rockies lineup eventually. And however, I would argue to say the Rockies have a better lineup in the future than the Red Sox do. But yeah, I mean, the Red Sox, they definitely could, use some pitching. They do have Cutter Crawford. They have. I think Tanner Houck as well in that rotation, but I just feel like they need a legitimate ace. And I feel like Blake Snell, he had a really good finish in 2024. Again, like starting off, it was horrible, and it was no big surprise. Again, it was a Scott Boras deal favorite. And, but I just feel like Blake Snell, they could definitely use that type of pitcher, a lefty pitcher. And I feel like a lot of their pitchers are righties. And so why not get a lefty pitcher of Blake Snell in Fenway? I think that just would work perfectly for Red Sox fans. And maybe, I don't know if it would work perfectly for Snell because, again, you got Scott Boras as your agent. But maybe, I think for a lot of Red Sox fans, I think they definitely, absolutely. And plus, right now, for the Red Sox, I'm pretty sure one of their biggest needs in the offseason is get starting pitching. And I think Blake Snell would work for them. And of course, Corbin Burns is still on the table for the Red Sox. I could see him going to Boston. But I just feel like Blake Snell would be more of a option because I think if you had to rank them, it would definitely be Burns and then Snell. And so I just feel like Snell to Boston sounds perfect. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And again, we were looking to do originally because we were in the talks about it. We were originally going to do top 15, but then actually some of the guys in the top 15, especially like Bellinger and some of the other guys, have already decided that they're staying. And so I was looking forward to potentially doing Bellinger because I had Bellinger going to, a team, and it might have been the Red Sox. Again, I might have had him going back to the Red Sox because last year, if people remember, both Tom and I, we predicted that Bellinger was going to go to the Red Sox because I know I believe his dad played for the Yankees, and I feel like it would be kind of fun for a Bellinger to play for Boston. And unfortunately, that never happened. But yeah, we're excited to do the top 10, and again, Teoscar Hernandez. I know he's not in the top 10, but he's definitely out there and arguably could be the top 10. And I told Tom this tonight that I'd argue and replace Flaherty with or some of the other guys in the top 10, especially 9, 10, 11. Excuse me, 8 guys, 8, 9, and 10 with Hernandez. But if we were to guess Hernandez, we were talking about earlier, I think Hernandez would fit well with Baltimore. I know that right now the favorites would be Boston and Baltimore, but I think Baltimore, I wouldn't be surprised if they get Teoscar, but both Tom and I, we were talking about it tonight, and I think it's definitely possible that Teoscar goes back to LA, and I think it would be pretty much not a big surprise,
Yeah, I haven't gone back to Los Angeles. I'm short-term deal, probably a 2-year or
one or 2 year deal. And I think a lot of these deals that we're seeing, that we're going to see, especially in the top. I mean, some of the big major guys like Corbin Burns, I don't think they're going to be like a 1-year deal necessarily type deals. They're going to be major deals. Bregman, I could see him being more of a smaller deal, like maybe a 2 or 3 year deal for like Tom points out. It's not going to be a big market, but especially some of the like Juan Soto, that's going to be a major deal. I mean, you look at the money that Juan Soto is asking for; it's a lot of money. So you're going to see a mix of both smaller contracts and some gigantic ones, especially the Juan Soto deals and Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is not going to be a big major deal. Pete Alonso. He's again, it's not going to be a a short one, like a 1 or 2 year deal necessarily thing. I think it's probably whatever the deal not Juan Soto, but Alonso's going to get. It's probably going to be there for the rest of his career, and I think it's going to be could be with the Mets, could be with what I predict the Yankees. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting, and again, it's the puzzle pieces for different teams. But I think because I was thinking about it today, I think Pete Alonso would look pretty darn good in the Yankees uniform and hitting balls over left field in Yankee Stadium. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And
don't forget the contract that Juan Soto turned down with the Yankees. With the Nationals, excuse me.
With the Nationals, yeah.
Reportedly $444 million with deferrals, but still. And imagine Alonso and Judge together. Those are the two guys who, at one point, one holds, the other previously held the home run record, a single season home run record by rookie.
Yeah, and Ty points out in the comments. Imagine if Pete would love to hit in Coors Field. I'm sure he would. It's just that if the Rockies were, a little bit more competitive and there was an open spot for Pete, I think he would definitely love to hit here. It's just that there's no room for him because we already have Michael Toglia, and plus I think Alonso would probably want to play for a competing team.
Well, Ty, we actually have a switch hitter in the lineup. Michael Toglia is a switch hitter, and we could have another one with Adele Amador.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Amador is, again, right at the door. Yeah, and again, Ty says right here, I think we have a serious need for switch hitters, and that's why we have Toglia and Amador, like he said, and so, the Rockies, they do have those guys, and I'll never forget, somebody said that the Rockies need more Dexter Fowlers, because Dexter Fowler, he was a switch hitter, right? And I think Fowler was a good hitter. I mean, he was an on-base machine, especially early in his career. I think Amador is going to be that type of guy, maybe not, huge power for Amador, but I do agree with Ty that the Rockies do need more switch hitters, and
they're tough. They can be tough to come by.
Right, and again, it's so hard to get Jose Ramirez's and guys like that because they're so incredibly rare, right? And I think
very rare.
Amador, again, because he's barely had any playing time, but I see some similarities with Amador with Jose Ramirez, even though Jose Ramirez has much more power. Than I think a lot of people were. I mean, again, Ramirez has 40 home run power, right? 40 home run power. Amador doesn't necessarily have that, but Amador definitely has, 20 home run power. So, there's some similarities there, but I do agree with Ty that we definitely need some more switch hitters. And thankfully, the Rockies already have at least one, and then they're going to have another one pretty soon with Dale Amador coming back into that lineup. So,
And to answer this question real quick, not this offseason, but in the future, if things are on the up and really looking to turn the corner after this season, then next offseason, yes, but not this offseason.
Yeah, not this offseason. And I think a couple of years ago when the Rockies thought that their rebuild was going to be over a lot sooner, like this past year, the Rockies said that they wanted to increase payroll, but since things are taking a little bit longer and they're waiting for these prospects to come up, they have to shed payroll. But when the time comes, I agree with Tom, they're going to spend money. You just hope that they spend it in the right places. And I think again, the Rockies, it's not like every single signing. Now, granted, like we talked about it before, how the Rockies, they have spent a lot of money, maybe not wrongly or with the wrong mind, but they just spent it not wisely. Ian Desmond. But there's been times where the Rockies have spent money very, very well. Like Jason Giambi, right? We got Jason Giambi, a Rockies favorite. So the Rockies, there's been times where the Rockies have spent money and they've done it well, right? And they've made some good moves. You just hope that they're good moves, but that's what we're hoping for. But yes, to answer your question, Ty, give it another year, a couple years or two, especially if the Rockies, once they're good back in that wild card positioning, things are going to be in a much better spot. And even though this wasn't necessarily a signing, the Rockies, they've made some good trades too. Like I remember in 2017 at the deadline, the Rockies got Jonathan Lucroy, which was probably one of the best decisions the Rockies have made in trade deadline history, in Rockies history, because again, he was crucial to that run in 2017 later in the season. Jonathan Lucroy was such a good signing. And I thought, Heck, I even thought that in 2020, despite it being such a bad year for the Rockies, I thought Kevin Pillar was a nice signing, even though the Rockies really couldn't go far that much. And again, the Dodgers, they were so good that 60-game season. But I thought Kevin Pillar was a nice signing there in 2020. And but yeah, it just we're gonna have to wait, Ty. So hang in there. Let's see here. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting offseason, and I'm excited again. Juan Soto, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be awesome to see where he goes. Where Alonso goes, where Corbin Burns goes, and if you guys have any predictions, just let them know. Let us know on Twitter or X, however you call it, or on Instagram. Just DM us. Let us know where you guys think. And if you guys want to write down a list of of the free agents, and you can list where you think they're going to go, let us know. And maybe we'll share them on our story, or we'll retweet them, re-comment on them, maybe. So if you guys want to do that, let us know. So as we wrap up tonight's show, again, we are closing in on the 2024 season. We only have a handful of podcasts for this year. We just want to say thank you so much to each and every one of you guys for just being with us this year. It's been a lot of fun. We've grown quite a bit. Again, this year we hit 4,500 followers on Instagram. We're currently at 4,500, but we hit 4,000, which was a huge milestone, and we're hoping to hit 5,000 next year, and so on and so forth. And so we're excited about that. We added Tom to the podcast, last year. This year we added Adam to the podcast, and then we have, we got a couple of writers, back in spring training to come on board. So Rockies, now we're growing, man, and we're excited about it. We're looking forward to the future. We're excited for what's ahead, and and again, it's all because of you guys. We really appreciate it, and we really couldn't have done this without you. So we appreciate it. And we do have a quick hello from Rodney. So hello, Rodney, watching on YouTube. So thank you, Rodney, for your comment and for saying hello. And then we do have one more comment here from Ty. What about Bauer? I don't think Bauer is going to be pitching in the big leagues anytime soon. I think his time is over. I don't know. Yeah, it's done. It's done. But yeah, as I was saying, again, big shout out to all of you guys for listening, and and I have said this before to other people, and you guys who are watching or listening might have noticed this, is that while the viewership or the following or the engagement hasn't been much on either our show or either on different parts of Rockies Now, whether it's our pages, well, it is somewhat discouraging. You know what? It's not a huge, big surprise, because the Rockies, they're in a rebuild, right? And it's very, very difficult to follow a team that's not doing very well. But I just cannot wait for the day when the Rockies are back in the playoffs and Rockies Nation is going crazy. It's going to be an awesome time, and I can't wait for that. But again, in the meantime, again, that it's so wonderful that we have followers like you guys who are watching it on Instagram or X or YouTube that are still sticking with us, because you guys are the real heroes. You guys are family. You guys are awesome. You guys are loyal Rockies fans, and we really appreciate that. And again, we really couldn't have done this without you. So anyway, folks, that's going to wrap up tonight's show of the Rockies Now podcast. Again, on behalf of myself, Tom, and Adam, we thank you for watching tonight's podcast episode. We hope you guys have a good week. Stay warm out there because it's pretty cold, and Thanksgiving is coming up. But yeah, we hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe out there. And as always, go Rockies.